Morning, hope you're doing well. Hope you've been enjoying our journey through Philippians. We're up to chapter 2 and verse 2, and it's the kind of the second half of a sentence, so I'm just going to read from verse 1 again and then focus in on what the Apostle Paul is writing in verse 2. So verse 1 says, "So if there is any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, any affection and sympathy, complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind." What the apostle is stressing here is not anything that's particularly unusual given the rest of the context of the letter. What we see, first of all, is he has such a depth of compassion for these Philippian Christians. He wants them to know Christ's love, know fellowship with the Spirit, and wants to see that gospel life being worked not just in them but through them into their relationships with one another. As we've probably referred to as we've gone through this letter so far, it would have been for these Christians at times a hostile environment in which they lived. To say Jesus is Lord in a Roman city like Philippi, a colony of Rome, was an affront to the culture. And so it might well have felt for these Philippian Christians that they're on the back foot amidst the culture that doesn't like them, doesn't want them to be there and say what they say. And within that context of pressure, it might have been a temptation for the church to be splintered and to be divided and to, feeling the pressure, not get on with one another. But Paul is relating this gospel of Jesus to the unity and the camaraderie and the closeness and the love that they are to have for one another. Having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. Now, of course, in the first century, one of the most important things was the preservation of the gospel and the clarity of the gospel. And so talking about having one mind, it certainly was, I'm sure, pointing to just a unity around the gospel. It not just saying just agree on everything, but it's saying just all be aligned in the truth of the gospel as I am presenting it and have presented it to you. But what he's speaking of, it's obvious from the context that what he's speaking of here is not just a mindless, slotting in and being aligned and this is the thing that we all believe and we tick that box and that sort of thing. It doesn't have that feel about it at all. It's a unity around the gospel that has so transformed their heart. And one wonderful thing about the Church of Jesus Christ is a bringing together of different people from different backgrounds, maybe different social status within a culture, maybe even language, different religious backgrounds, to bring them together. And so in all the first century churches, the challenge of being united was a real one. And it is for us today as well. Perhaps in your small group, in your site with Christian brothers and sisters, perhaps in your family or in your workplace, you're managing through today tensions of how can we work together. You be reminded from this that the path of Jesus is to be a peacemaker, is to be someone who sees their role and say, how can we work well together? How can I do all that's in my power to live with good accord with others? Okay, so he's obviously talking particularly about the church here and the church, those within the church getting along and being united. But if we're looking to how can we outwork this today? Or what context are you going into? And there might be moments today that you're going to choose to be united. Sometimes that means actually speaking the truth, but playing as team and seeing the value of the whole, not just thinking of yourself, but thinking of others. And that's exactly what Paul goes on to unpack. So we'll do more of that tomorrow. But have this mind, this idea of unity, it comes from the gospel. God himself is a God, one God, three persons, a community united together in love. Let's do all that we can to walk in the goodness of that in the context that we find ourselves in today.